Liz, warm welcome to Startup Grind.
Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here today.
It's great to have you here. As a start, could you sort of make a short, brief introduction of yourself?
Well, I recently gave birth to my baby girl. My husband and I are super happy about that. We're over the moon. There have been a couple of late nights, but it's incredibly worth it. But I'll give you a little bit more background to my professional life. So, I started my career in PR back with several different PR agencies, some big names: Edelman, Ogilvy, Red Agency, where I represented clients such as Microsoft, Google, SAP, Indiegogo, Parrot, which is the makers of the AR drone, Neura headphones, and all that sort. I was also worked in-house for the CSIRO, which is Australia's science and research organization. And I've also been mentoring and advising several startups. And I guess one of the things that my personal claim to fame is being the head of PR and communications for a little startup called Canva. I joined them as employee 100 something. And back then they were valued at around 300 million plus. And when I left, they were valued at 40 billion. So it was really exciting for me then. And today I am the co-founder and COO of a company called Angelflow. And it's a platform that we designed to make angel investing easier.
Great, thank you. And I mean that number, Canvas, Rise, and all the other companies, of course, I recognize them as well. So it's really good to have you here, and we're going to talk about those three very important parts. One, crafting a startup story. Two, pitch deck essentials. And three, how to get PR coverage. But before we jump into that, maybe you can tell us a little bit more also what Angelflow does, and so what the platform is and how you can join.
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, with Canva, I've been incredibly lucky to be part of this rocket ship. So what we're hoping to do is to give back to the community by supporting more startups. And that is why we built Angelflow. We wanted to help more startups in Asia succeed by bridging that funding gap. So between the first investments from friends and family to their first VC checks. How do we actually do this? We tap into this valuable angel investor community. On the flip side, we also want to give angel investors more access to promising startups in our platform. So they are able to do this by joining an angel syndicate so that they can pool their investments together, and usually actually in smaller ticket sizes, and invest together into one startup. So it becomes super meaningful because then angels can actually support the startups that they are passionate about and literally change the trajectory of this startup. And if you actually imagine it, back in 2010, if you invested 5,000 into Uber and Airbnb, how amazing would it be for you today? And that's exactly what we're trying to do. And the funny thing is that it's incredibly common for angel investors to participate in this innovation economy in other countries like the US and Europe. But somehow Asia is underrepresented. And that's what we're trying to change. We're trying to make it easy to participate by being an angel investor.
And if you're an angel investor and you can get other angels in, then of course that's better for your first angel investment as well as an investor. So I can definitely see the benefits of the platform. Now, as part of that, we're going to come to the first topic: how to craft a compelling startup story that resonates with investors and media.
Yeah. So one of the key things that I tell people that I advise is to really understand that you need different approaches for different audiences. So what I mean by that is that when you're talking to journos, for example, they get inundated with several pitches from companies every day. Startups who are doing amazing things, traditional companies who are also doing amazing things. So it's really important that while you believe that your pitch is interesting, and I'm sure it is, the reality is that journalists just need to find stories that they feel that their readers would be interested in. And on the other hand, say you're pitching to an investor, it's completely different because they too receive several pitches every day. You can imagine their email inbox being really full of pitches, cold calls, people that they know, introductions made by a friend of a friend. But what they're really looking for is the business or the startup that could actually give them a return on investment. So it's important to change your narrative when you speak to different audiences because what they're looking for could be entirely different. So the second thing as well to understand is, why are you doing what you're doing? Because that will basically set the scene for every communications outreach that you're doing, right? So the first thing that I also tell people when they're starting on their outreach strategies is to simply write down what your objectives are. Now, these could be anything, right? But every piece of communications that you put out there needs to have the appropriate call to action. So for example, if you're hoping to announce the results of a new funding round, you need to ask yourself, hang on a second, why do I actually feel that I need to announce a funding round? Is it because you want to signal it to other investors that, hey, these investors believe in our vision, believe in our mission, and they've put in some money to our startup? Or is it actually to attract new talent? Because you're telling, potential candidates that you've got the backing of some investors, that you're really in it for the long haul, and you want to hire some amazing talent to join your startup. Or on the other hand, it could actually be an opportunity for you to get new customers because they might be, oh, I never heard of this company, but because you've been funded, you're actually doing some great things with this money. You're entering my market. I might actually be interested in your product. I might sign up. I'll get in touch, and you've got a new client. It could be something like that. So it's really important to understand, first and foremost, why are you doing this and who are you speaking to? And I guess one of the other things I also wanted to share is that it's really important to think about how you can best articulate your startup journey. So what I mean by that is thinking about the whys behind why you're doing all this and what are your personal motivations. And the reason I say this is because a lot of times what makes news or what piques people's interest is the power of the human story, and never underestimate the human story. People love to learn from others and how you've actually identified the problem, how you came to the solution, because that actually provides context so that people can understand what your motivations are and, of course, your industry experience. I'm not going to buy from someone or get in touch with someone who I don't really feel a personal connection to. So at the end of the day, if you can establish that trust by being a human and sharing that story about your journey, you can actually establish some real good rapport with them. And that would actually give you an edge for, especially when you're looking into that call to action later. How to get more personal connections equates getting people to do what you ask them to do, to get them to do what you want them to do.
And it's really good points. What you really, as a stay human and be relatable. Sometimes when we look through things, we also look for sort of red flags, what not to do. So what are kind of some common mistakes that you see founders make when sharing their story that they should look out for?
Yeah, I think in terms of red flags, it's important to not use any highfalutin, grandiose adjectives to describe your startup. Because when you're saying things like, oh, you're the first of this type, or you're the pioneer, you better have the facts to back up that claim. Because what happens is that you're selling this, you might be overselling it. And the person that's receiving that kind of message might actually feel cynical right from the start. And you definitely don't want to do that. You definitely want to be, like I said, authentic and develop that trust. And if you're not realistic from the start and you start using all these really, strong words, it actually mars that trust. And I think it actually puts you in a little bit of a disservice by being too strong right from the start. So be careful with the adjectives that you choose when you create that pitch deck, when you create that narrative. Be realistic.
Yeah, because if you say we are the only one in the world, and no, you can't be, then you start to wonder as the recipient of the message.
Yeah.
Great. Now you have a story, and as you said, you should have different stories for different recipients, but you have a story. Now you're going to put it into your pitch deck. So what are the pitch deck essentials, the do's and don'ts for winning presentation?
One of the things that it's important to remember is that you need to understand what the purpose of a pitch deck is. And what I mean by that is that a lot of times we have the temptation to put as much information as we can into a pitch deck. But the purpose of a pitch deck is really to gain the interest of an investor. And no investor, as I said earlier, has the time or the ability to read through your deck in minute detail. If they have, if it would be funny to say that, oh, I received your pitch deck, I read through everything in full detail, your pitch deck has answered all my questions, so shut up, take my money, let's close the deal. It's not going to happen. The purpose of a pitch deck is actually to get that first meeting. So it's not a book, and it's definitely not the be all and end all of your content, right? So you don't have to put everything in your pitch deck, and especially a pitch that's going to be like 30 pages long. It's not important. But what you can do is actually leverage the beauty of a properly designed pitch deck. Because a good design can actually really help with making sure that your pitch deck isn't too noisy, and more importantly, that it's enjoyable to read. And I'm going to put a plug here, but Canva actually does have a lot of free pitch deck templates that you can use. So definitely try to get on that. But essentially, a pitch deck is like a resume, right? So it helps you get that meeting. And the reason for that resume to be short and simple is you just want to secure that meeting so that you can present yourself in person. Then you can have that real conversation in person as well. And again, put that face behind that piece of paper. So if you get to that pitch meeting, this is actually the time where you might want to have another deck that has a little bit more information. So you're seeding more information each time, because this is a time when you already know that this investor is interested, and you do want to give them a little bit more information and create more dialogue with that pitch deck. And again, keep it clear and simple. One of the other things around pitch decks that I've seen through my experience with Angelflow and with all the other startups that I've worked with is making sure that you articulate the problem that you're trying to solve and your solution. And again, it's tempting to want to address all the problems that your solution could solve. And I get that. I really, really get that. But there's a reason why we say focus, and focus on one thing, because focus basically means shining a spotlight, right? And you can't focus on all these different things and share all the different solutions, because it does confuse the reader. And unless, again, you're prepared to write a book, which nobody's going to read, you're going to waste a lot of time trying to put that messaging down in a very concise manner, and it's just not going to work. It's important for you to just focus. And another thing with that as well is that when you do focus, it's also important not to use so many buzzwords and jargon, especially if that might confuse an investor, because there's nothing worse than reading something that you have on your computer, on your laptop, or your device, where you think, oh no, I've now got to go on Google to search what this term means. Oh no, I really don't understand. Because what that means is that an investor is just going to be like, yep, next. It's a bit too hard for me, too complicated. I've got 500 other pitch decks to read. I'm not going to go through yours and find out and waste my time finding what it is. So it's really important for you to use simple words that could get your message across. And like I said, if you can make it as realistic as possible, avoid those highfalutin messages or terms, forget about drop life-changing, drop world first, one of a kind. It's not good. I think you'll be in a better place to secure that first meeting with an investor.
Really good points. And you said it twice. You said confusing. And I was working with a Canadian investor, and he said to me, confused mind says no. Yeah. The rationale is that in our brain, even though if the logic says, yeah, you should like this, we have other parts of the brain that says no. And if it says no early because of confusion, as you said, then often your pitch deck is not going to go forward. Now, what is like one thing or many things that founders underestimate about pitching?
I think one of the biggest things that founders tend to underestimate is the stress of pitching. And I think it's incredibly important for every founder to be mindful of their mental health and to take it easy on themselves. Because I know that there is a saying that many people believe when it comes to public communications outreach, right? There's a saying that people say, you only have one chance, or you have one shot to make a good impression. The truth is, there's more than one opportunity. There's more than one way to tell your story and more than one way to communicate that. So if one way doesn't work, it's okay. Don't stress. Don't give up. What you have to do is get the feedback, rejig your messaging, find a new journalist to pitch to, or find a new investor to pitch to, and just try again. So I think, don't underestimate the power, the stress that might happen when you go into your pitching, but just be open to change and to adapt that messaging that you have.
Yeah, I agree. And also have fun, because you are going to pitch not only once, but many times. So it needs to be a bit of fun to do it.
Yep.
Now, you have the story, you have the pitch deck.
Mm-hmm.
Now you want to go out there and, as you said earlier, like get noticed. So how do you secure PR coverage for your startup in Hong Kong and beyond?
Okay. There are several ways to do this, but one thing is to figure out what advantages you have. Now, if you are a traditional established company, say like Microsoft or Google, right? You've actually got a lot of stakeholders that you have to report to. You have to be very, very careful with anything you say because various reasons, right? However, if you're a startup, you actually are in an enviable position that you can actually go out and share some insight and commentary that is unique and, dare I say, sometimes even controversial. And that's great, because what happens is that you're actually developing some thought leadership for yourself and for your startup. So if you can be that person that is happy to share your insights and is also brave enough to challenge that conventional thinking in a public forum, you can actually get a lot of traction from that. And as long as you do it respectfully and, of course, with the facts to back your claim, you should actually be in a good place. So this would actually help you become a thought leader. And if you are doing this regularly, you'd actually have that or build that authority to continue to comment on that topic or on that industry. And that is exactly what media, journals, and event organizers are looking for. Someone who is brave enough to share a new thought-provoking piece of insight that would generate more conversation. And if you can couple this with industry trends and what's new in the news, and of course your personal experience, that's even better, because you're marrying up your personal human experience to the trends and to your insights. And that will definitely set you apart. That's what's going to get you in front of these people who are making those decisions.
A really good point there about Microsoft and Google, and anyone who's companies on the stock market have to be very careful. And there are also other ones like government organizations. But I guess then in the same way, if you as a startup approach a big organization, a co-working space or a government entity, and you say, hey, I got a good story, maybe you can collaborate because the other party also wants to have attention, but you then being the sort of the catalyst for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, when it comes to media, as we said earlier, the journalist wants to write something that somebody will read, and therefore it's going to be useful. Are there any specific media outlets or journalists in Hong Kong or Asia that are especially startup friendly?
There definitely is. But there's a thing that I really believe in, is that if you're only as good as a journalist that you really don't have anything. And what I mean by that is journals change all the time. Journal interests also change all the time. Like I said, they follow what their readers are interested in. So someone that you think is covers your news to maybe say last year, they might not be interested in what you have to say this year. The same thing as well for, like the media outlet. Some, a newspaper or online news that might have been really popular 2 years ago might not even exist today. So it's really, really important to try and identify a new target list for every piece of communications that you want to share. So I can actually give you a tip on how to do that. The best way to do this is actually go and search for the journals who are talking about your competitors. Because these are the journals who already have some context into your industry, and they already understand or have an understanding of what problem you're trying to solve. So they also already know that industry might be particularly interesting for their readership as well. So they've already done the hard work. So your competitors have already done the hard work. And now's the time to give them a different perspective. And that's what I mean about when I say having that thought leadership. If you have a new insight to share or something different, something maybe even a little bit controversial, they would be interested to hear more, especially if you can relate it back to maybe your competitor as well. That's going to get that interest. And those are the journals that you want to reach out to.
Yeah, and that will eventually actually, for that journalist, their first or second article now with you is going to have a longer life because it could be a follow-up. So it makes life also easier for them. And that's a really good point. Great. So we spoke about crafting a startup story, pitch deck essentials, and how to get PR coverage. Now, from your work at Angelflow, do you have any success stories that you worked with?
Well, I'd like to say that every startup I work with has a success story or has experienced some sort of success, especially with PR and reaching out to the media. And, if you follow the advice of understanding your objective first, understanding the audiences and tailoring your message to them in the right way, and then understanding what your key messages are, I think you have a very high chance of getting some incredible coverage. And I think, one case that stands out particularly to me is a consumer product that was actually just in its infancy stage. And what I mean by that is a prototype stage. That startup was able to get really good media coverage because the founder understood how to articulate the problem that he was trying to solve in the right way with this new solution, a very new way of tackling that problem. And it was a very clear and attractive position that he made. So it was really rewarding for both of us when we managed to get that product on the front page or front cover of Time magazine as one of the best inventions. And like I said, it was still in this prototyping stage, but if you really think about how you can craft that message that is important for their readers, it was a timely consumer gadget that people at that time could use. This was during COVID that they could use. That startup was able to do that. And because of that, as a result, they surpassed their crowdfunding goals. They were crowdfunding at that time. So it was really, I would say it was a success story. And they knew at that point that they wanted to get PR coverage because they wanted more people to support the crowdfunding project. And I think they've done exactly just that. And it was just fantastic. And yeah, it was a great piece of coverage.
Now, today's talk came out of a contact where we had a discussion because I know that you are at Angelflow. You're going to plan to run a number of courses. So maybe you can tell us a bit more about the range of courses and also how startups can participate.
Yeah, so this is part of our mission to support startup founders. We created this thing called Angelflow Academy. So it basically delivers founder and investor education through workshops presented by local startup players. And what I mean by that is what we term like the super experts. So people that have actually been there and done that. And together, what we want to do is we're going to be hosting several workshops that focus on delivering real quality content. And what I mean by that is practical tips that you can use immediately. The other thing that we're doing is that these are experts that are local. And what that means is that they can actually give you localized advice, because I don't know about you, but sometimes when I look for advice from, workshops, a lot of them is information that is tailored to a startup in the US. And we all know, for example, that raising money or fundraising in the US is very, very different if you're fundraising in Hong Kong. So hopefully we'll be able to have local experts that can give you real pointers around things like that, like local information that you can use. And the other thing about these workshops, like I said, it's specialized for startups. So these experts recognize that founders often have limited resources and they need meaningful advice that's tailored to their startup journey. It's so funny because I've had so many people ask me, "Oh, Liz, should I just invest and get a PR agency on board?" And I'm like, PR agencies can cost a lot. And a lot of times they actually focus on delivering things that might not be relevant or useful for your startup. They might spend a lot of your budget on reporting. And, as a startup, you might have one or two pieces of coverage and you really don't care about, don't really have that much money to spend on understanding what your competitors' coverage is all about. So you need to think back on whether or not you have the resources for a PR agency. So I digress, but what we want to do with Angelflow Academy, like I said, is offer the right material for startups in their early stage journey. And I think, if you're interested, if anybody here is interested, just go and visit angelflow.vc/academy, and you'll be able to find more information. And you can also get in touch with me over LinkedIn or send me an email as well. But there is a box there where we are inviting people to share, what other topics that they might be interested, because we want to create this for the founders in Asia. We want to know what kind of information you want. Right now, I am doing a course on PR. There's online and there's offline, in person as well. But there are also other courses. And again, I invite more suggestions for other courses for future courses.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea to sort of crowdsource the challenges people face.
Mm-hmm.
So we are getting close to the Q&A session. Great discussion. There's one question that I normally nowadays ask since AI came about. So what are your thoughts in regards to the rise of generative AI, and how do you see AI shaping startups, growing and telling the stories in the next few months or years?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to think that these tools will help founders better craft and articulate their story, because gone are the days where you have to be an expert wordsmith to create a piece of content, or to actually have the confidence to put something out there with your opinion. And I think with AI, you can simply put in the right prompt to get a really compelling piece of content. But what I believe is that it's still important for you to become real thought leader by introducing that courageous, brave new idea. And that's what I've been saying around thought leadership. Because oftentimes when we know that AI rehashes content that they find, right? So the challenge here is for you to come up with a new perspective. And then perhaps you can then lean on the tools to help you formulate your argument. But you still need to be able to come up with something new, something that is relevant and that will ignite other people's ideas and creativity.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, crafting the stories, we make sure there are no mistakes in them, but also you can craft 3 different versions and say which one do you like the most. That
Yeah.
was that I shouldn't say that wasn't possible before, but before AI, it was taking a bit tedious to make 2 that you're going to throw away. Now you can do that.
And again, just the confidence. I mean, you can use so many different tools online now that would even make you sound smarter, business speak, fluency, everything. So there really is no reason why you can't put a compelling piece of content out there. Again, like I said, if you have a creative idea, use it as a tool to help you articulate it.
Liz, it's been amazing having you here at Startup Grind. We're not done yet, but we really love your insights. I know you mentioned how to contact you, so LinkedIn, Angelflow VC, and we're also going to, in the follow-up email from this event, also include your contact details so you can reach out.
Amazing. And better yet, go to angelflow.vc to sign up for a founder profile, and we can actually connect there. And other investors will be able to follow your journey as well.
Yeah, and then you get in front of people so that they can find you. That's I shouldn't say it's a very good step forward.
Yeah.
Liz, once again, it's been amazing to have you here at Startup Grind. Thank you for sharing your insights.
My pleasure.
What we're going to do now is we're going to move on to the Q&A session. So I'm going to